next guests, Dr. Mark and Joni Adler. Dr. Adler is the superintendent for Ralston Public Schools. He and his wife are leaders in the community, and they have been touched by this topic of bullying in a profound way. And I would like to let them tell you about Reed and Reed's story. Please help me welcome Dr.
All right, it's our pleasure to be here today, and we're going to talk about some things, a journey that we're on that we wish we weren't, but we are. And sometimes God puts you in places that you least expect, and you have to listen so that you can carry that message. So you are going to hear from Joni and I. My day job, like they said, is superintendent of schools with Ralston. But you're going to hear from parents tonight. Parents that are living a journey that we wish we weren't on, just like I said. We're not going to talk to you about research and all the things that are out there. You're hearing from Mark and Joni, the parents of Reed, also the parents of Jade and Camille. Just a couple things before we get rolling here. Dr. Jim talked a little bit before about kindness, and that's really what we're going to talk about tonight, probably more than anything else, along with a little bit of our journey. But if you look up kindness in the dictionary, it's a noun. And what I want you guys to think about tonight and talk with your kids about it, let's make it a verb. And I think that's what Dr. Jim kind of outlined a little bit earlier tonight, is some sort of kind act. And we can do that. It doesn't cost any money. I got a couple comments before we get started. And the other thing I got, just a disclaimer really quick, is I put together the slides. Joni and I have been super busy. We just got back from a trip yesterday to New York to see our daughter Jade. And so she hasn't got to look at these yet, so we're going to kind of wing some of this. So hopefully you guys will be kind to us as we go through this. One thing I want to talk about is courage before we get going too much. First of all, it takes courage to come here. To listen to this. It's going to take courage to talk to your kids about this. We're going to talk some about suicide, about bullying, cyberbullying, intimidation, manipulation. We're going to talk about being kind. And sometimes we have to do things that take courage. And my definition of courage is when we know we should do things, and when we do things when we don't want to. And that's courage. And so one thing before we get started also is, there's a perception sometimes that schools in the city don't work together. And I want you to hear loud and clear, that's not true. We work together all the time. Dr. Suffman's one of my good friends. And so just a little story here. When Reed passed away a little over a year ago, of course we're going to have his funeral, right? His celebration of life. And Reed was a kid that you would want in your school. He was a great kid. And so a lot of people would want to attend his funeral service. And one thing I really got a chance to tell the Miller board that I was appreciative of is they called up, and whatever we needed, they would provide. Whether that's subs, help with supporting the grief of our students, all those things. And they weren't the only ones. Schools all across the city, whatever it takes, we will take care of this. Of course, Joni and I were dealing with other things. And one of the first calls that morning was from Dr. Jim, and I appreciate it. Okay. All of this matters. What we're talking about tonight matters. How we treat each other, the importance, and how serious the consequences can be. And like I said, our story is one that you can't make up. We wish we weren't here, but we are. It's about bullying, intimidation, manipulation, suicide, but mostly it's about parenting and kindness. Our message is about kindness and hope. We hope that you see that tonight. And I want you to know that the Army, to make a difference in all this, is right here, and it's also our kids. And Joni and I talked to a lot of students. We've talked to over 12,000 people already about this. And we basically are just going to call you out right now and say, listen, you guys have to be a part of the solution. Your kids have to be a part of the solution. We talk to kids. We can stop bullying when we go to a school and talk. We say to them, you can stop it today. The Army to stop bullying is all the kids. We got to arm ourselves with the tools to say we will not accept this in our school. And we also talk a little bit about if you're a student that watches somebody else get bullied, watches somebody else get treated inappropriately, and you stand there silent, you are also a part of the problem. We all have to band together to make this come together and work. And so those are some of the things that are on our mind. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about our son Reed. Reed passed away January 7th, 2016. Reed took his own life. We'll talk a little bit about this story as we go through. We would love to hear from you. We think the simple answer is to be kind. And sometimes that's hard for folks to do. But we think the simple answer is for that. If you have something that resonates with you that we talk about tonight, we would love for you to shoot us a note, Twitter, whatever the case may be, and help us on our journey and our mission to share kindness and hope. This is our family on 4th of July 2015, right before the Independence Day Parade, that we always walked in as a family together. Ralston, as you know, has one of the biggest celebrations for Independence Day, and as a family, we always did this together, and we would always take a picture right before that parade. So on the top right is our son Reed, of course myself, Joni, and on the left is our daughter Jade, who's now a freshman. She's in her first year at the United States Military Academy at West Point. And then our daughter in the middle is Camille. She's a 7th grader at Ralston Middle School. This is also our family, one of our favorite pictures. This is on Christmas Eve 2015, around 3 o'clock, right before we went to Christmas service on Christmas Eve. And we kind of joke, I think it's a pretty darn good picture. It was our very first ever family selfie. So we're pretty excited. The bad news is it's also our last family selfie. We never had a chance to do this again because it was about 2 weeks after this that Reed took his life. All right.
Before we talk about Reed, the Adlers want you to know there is always help and hope. Right now, counselors with the Boys Town National Hotline are ready to talk or just listen. The number is 1-800-448-3000. Now the Adler's story and the hope that they can save another family from enduring such a tragedy.
It's on his cell phone.
Yeah.
Mark Adler's favorite family selfie. His wife Joni, girls Camille and Jade, and the Adler's only son, Reed.
Interesting, and I maybe look at it different than others, but we can go from that to where we are now.
The Adler family shattered. Reed is now missing from the picture.
He had the biggest heart. He was just, would do anything for anybody. And he was always that guy that, no man left out, no person left out.
Ralston School Superintendent Mark Adler and his family share photos and their son's artwork.
Yesterday,
The 15-year-old took his own life on January 7th.
This isn't at all what we would choose. And I've had so many parents say to me, I couldn't even imagine. And I hope you never have to.
They describe Reed as outgoing, cheery, a basketball player, a good student, a jokester.
Reed had friends everywhere.
But after his death, the family uncovered disturbing facts.
We're talking about bullying. We've had bullying for decades.
The Adlers learned Reed was being bullied.
Understanding that an individual had been threatening him for months and months with a picture that he had given it that was completely inappropriate.
The parents would learn weeks after his death something Reed never shared with them. They say another teenager was taunting Reed over and over, threatening to post a private picture of Reed to social media. There were hints in December that something was wrong.
I think about Reed, and he did reach out. And before Christmas, he said to Joni, I feel like at times I don't want to live. And we automatically went to counseling and had some great times. We were able to really talk to him about how special he was.
The family can only imagine what Reed was thinking.
I'm going to let my parents know I'm going by my sisters now. I'm going to be embarrassed for myself. I've got all these friends.
And I guess, the shame and the thought of having to explain that to us, to the rest of the student body. Obviously, it was a very snap decision for him to take his life.
His sister Camille now wears a locket.
It had his finger imprinted on the front.
Jade seeing constant reminders of her freshman brother at Ralston High.
It's just everywhere. You look. Sorry. Okay.
Her father and the district renewing their stand against bullying.
We didn't know what was happening with Reed. Do you think that the leader of the district would let his own son get bullied like this? Absolutely not. But I'm going to tell you this, I'm not going to let any of our kids get bullied if we know about it.
Mark and Joni urging kids to talk with their parents about whatever is on their hearts, no matter how embarrassing or painful.
I guess, if there's a message that I could share with a student, the rest of the children, just don't leave your parents out.
And a message for parents to be fully present in their children's lives. The Adlers say they were.
It's unconditional love. We're going to love you no matter what. And we're going to help you. And know that no matter where you're at, somebody's going to help you.
This superintendent now leaning on the advice he often shares with students.
What has been done cannot be changed, but what's ahead we can define. And so we have to work on what are we going to define down the road? What are we going to stand for?
Now, the family doesn't want finger pointing. They want people to treat each other with kindness and respect. And if you know about bullying on social media or in person, tell a trusted adult.
So Reed was an awesome kid, and you've heard a lot about him. He was an athlete, he was smart, he was a great kid. What we're most proud of him is he had probably, and I'm probably a little biased, but I felt like he had the most kind heart, the most caring heart of any kid that I've ever met. He was a guy that didn't want to leave anybody out. Everybody, there were kids in my basement, 8, 9, 10 kids at a time, not exaggerating. And sometimes they wouldn't go home. And then I'd say, hey, you guys have parents, I can't tell you how much pop and pizza we bought over the years, and we would do that again in a millisecond. We wish we still could. So all that about Reed is cool, but Reed wasn't perfect. And what we didn't know was, when Reed was in middle school, he took a picture of himself that was inappropriate of his midsection. Didn't show his face, any part of his body, but did show his midsection with no clothes on. He shared that with a girl. Unfortunately, he didn't share it with a nice girl. And what we didn't know is, we think for 9 or 10 months, that girl held that over Reed's head. If you don't do this or this, I'm going to share this out on social media. I know this will embarrass you. And we feel like what happened, and we've had to piece this together, and it's taken a while. We feel like Reed had enough. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to continue to let you harass me. And so we think he quit communicating with her and said, I'm not going to communicate with you anymore, and it made her mad. And on January 6th, she held she held up her end of the deal, and she shared it on social media. She shared that picture of Reed on a website called Omaha Purge, and then it all went from there. Earlier that night, Reed finished his homework, and Reed was a great kid, but he also was a kid that, if he was not going to school the next day, I'll guarantee he's not going to be doing his homework. So he kind of went by the seat of his pants on some of that stuff, but he had finished all his homework, and that's where we think this was an impulse decision. That what happened that night was Reed's worst nightmare came true. She posted that, and he didn't know what to do. And so his answer was he would just take his own life, which he did that night. Go on. So when we talk with kids a lot. Like I said, we've talked to over 12,000 people, mostly students. And we try to talk about, where do they come in here? And the things that we've learned through this that we think are important, and that's where we let the mom talk, and she is really good at that. So I'm going to turn it over to Joni.
So I feel like we are all given situations so that we can learn from one another. And so we talk to kids a lot about what can they learn from this situation. And as I listened to Karen and she spoke about building up a resilience or building up a grit, that makes me think about where I talk to kids about finding their value and where to find that value. That I want them to find their value from the people that love them and not from their peers that like, retweet, or favorite a post that they make. I want them to find their value from within themselves. And I used a little demonstration. I have a very crisp $20 bill in my hand. Raise your hand if you'd like to have that $20 bill.
Come on, you guys want 20.
Now I'm going to crumple that $20 bill up. How many of you still want it? Now I'm going to throw it on the ground, grind it into the ground a bit. How many of you still want that 20? Of course you do, because it's still worth $20. Short of burning it or tearing it into small pieces, it will still be worth $20. The same is true with us. No matter what it is that happens to us, we still have great worth. And a power that's greater than us has given this piece of paper value, and the same is true with us. So I encourage them to find their value in those people that love them and not from their peers. And I think that's part of building up their resistance and knowing who you are and what you stand for and what you have as a family and what you bring to the world. Next, we talk about mistakes. You know, since Reed passed away, there have been over 10 suicide deaths in the metro area. And recently there was one out in Kearney and also one here in town as well. I don't know the details of all of them because very few people talk about it. And I think even Mark and I wonder, is it something that we should talk about? Like, we don't want to give kids ideas or make them think this is something cool to do. We don't want to sensationalize suicide in any way. But what I have found with the stories that I know about children that have died of suicide is most of them made a mistake. They made a mistake that they felt like was too big, that they couldn't overcome, and that they don't understand that that part of their life is so teeny tiny compared to their whole life. And they don't give us the opportunity to help them problem solve. So we talk about mistakes and how there is no mistake that is too big, that cannot be overcome. There's no mistake worth the price of your life. And then we have to talk about forgiveness. There's a lot of things to forgive here. First of all, it may be forgiving ourselves for things that we've done and that were wrong in the past. Secondly, we may need to forgive those who have done things that hurt us. Some of those hurts are very deep. Some of them are ongoing. Maybe the person that hurt us shows no remorse for their actions at all. And I encourage kids to forgive anyway, and you as well. Forgiveness is not for the person that offended you. It is for you. If someone hurt you for one moment, don't give them any more moments of your life. Forgiveness is for the health of your soul and your well-being, not for the person that offended you. I'm very grateful to say that from the moment we pieced this story together, not once did I have hate for the young lady that posted the picture. In fact, if I were given the opportunity to be part of her restoration, that is what I would want to do. I'm much better at this most other days, all right?
Never got
knowing a human being and knowing that she too, she did intend to hurt Reed. She did not intend for him to die. So just like Reed made a mistake, she made a mistake. And I would love to have the opportunity to help her to overcome that, because I can only imagine what life must be like. What life must be like for her. And to know that her one impulse action caused this ripple effect that really has gone across the country is pretty incredible. So forgiveness, definitely key.
This is a slide I didn't tell you about. You know, a couple more things before we move along is just how wide this is. And, you know, I know Karen talked about, you know, the girl in Florida and not being able to press this issue any further. And I've wondered about that, quite honestly, because we're fairly certain why Reed passed away and what made him take these actions. But the girl has to live with this. And in my opinion, that's one of the most significant things that she's going to have to carry on her heart for a long time. But further than that, it's so wide. You know, the night that this all happened, after this girl posted this picture, then the text messages and the messaging back and forth is flying. And Reed's on there, and he's saying things like this, and many of his friends are on there, and these are kids that are my kids that I love. Reed says, "I'm a disgrace to the family. I'm an embarrassment. I'm just going to kill myself." And we have the Safe School Hotline and all those things. We have all those tools. And kids are saying to him, "No, you're not. We're going to call somebody." And he would say, "I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding." Unfortunately, later on that night, he is texting with his girlfriend, and they decide they're going to go sleep. And so they do, and they'll figure this out the next morning. A little later on, he texts her back, and he says, "Please help me." She doesn't text back. The next morning, she texts back, and he doesn't text back. And so she gets a little snarky and going back and forth about "Fine, then don't answer back." Well, I didn't answer back because he's not alive. And so she finds out this whole thing when the principal comes to get her out of class at 8:30 and inform her of this. And so that's heavy on her heart. Also, some of his best friends, that are some of the best kids we have in our school, also didn't say anything. And so what we got to do is we got to arm our kids to know that if kids are saying stuff that are crazy out there, we have to tell them they must tell people. They must reach out and tell somebody, whether that's called 911, the Safe Schools Hotline, one of their principals or counselors, somebody else. Because I wish one kid would just send me a text, say, "Doc, go check on Reed quick. He's acting crazy. We maybe wouldn't be talking tonight." And so that's something that we talk about with young people. I'm not angry with any of those kids. Not at all. They didn't think it was a big deal because Reed said, "Oh, I'm just joking." And he probably was at that time. But later on that night, when his mind is racing about how bad this is going to be, he didn't know what to do. And so we got to arm our kids not only to respect each other and have kindness, but what to do in these situations when maybe they're running through a tough time and they need a little help from us as adults. So we say, what do we do? Go back one. And these are just things that we talked about. And these are things that we feel like we've done a lot of, Joni and I. Continue to surround your kids with love and a caring heart. Be engaged and present. And I say, this has been a big thing with Joni. Make memories that will last a lifetime. Reed was a kid that we just did a ton with. He was 15 when he passed away. And he told me the fall that he passed away, he said to me, he always called me Pops. He said, "Pops, I think I've been to over 50 Husker games." And he's probably right. And when I thought about that, I don't know that I was sad, but I thought, maybe that's not good that I've taken him to 50 Husker games. Because we didn't grow up with a whole lot, and I didn't go to a Husker game until I was 17.
I took him to a Motley Crue concert.
was fun too.
And the Orpheum Theater.
But I didn't go to a Husker until I was 17, Reed had been to 50 by the time he was 15. What I'm telling you is, I wouldn't trade that for anything. So do things with your kids, make memories, make sure they know that you love them. And you know, one of the great things about going to counseling with Reed was we were able to sit down and tell him how special he was, why we loved him, what made him different than his sisters. It was incredible. And I'm going to tell you, everything we do is about our kids. That's just what we do. We don't sit down at the dinner table and say, this is why I love you so much. But I'm so thankful we were able to do that. Talking to your kids how to treat others. You know, obviously we're talking about electronic devices. We didn't know about this stuff that Reed was dealing with. We wish we would have. When we talk about be kind, you know, we try to spread that word everywhere. We have clings that we give out, wristbands, just whatever it is. And this fall, they did a little story because the football team wore a little thing on the back of their helmet that said RA13. And then it said be kind. It was all wrapped in this little logo that was on the back of our football team's helmets. And a gal come up and she interviewed me and Joni, and she said, well, it seemed pretty simple. You know, just be kind. I think that's the irony of it. It's simply that simple. It's that simple to just be kind, and that would make our world a whole lot better place to be. All right, this is audience participation time, so if you can, I would love for you to stand up. We're just about done. This is the last slide. And I don't know, Jim, if you want us to take any questions or if we just roll. Okay, put your hands up if you can for me. All right, a little further. A little bit further. All right, you sit down. Thank you for humoring me on this, but I do have a point here. This situation is about all of us. It's not just about Millard and Ralston, it's about the whole city and all of our kids, and it's important, and we need everybody to be a part of it. And so what I want you to know is, let's arm our kids. Let's teach our kids to be kind every day, no matter what. Let's teach our kids that if they see somebody else that's not being kind, they just don't sit back and say it's okay. That they speak out, they get some help. I'm going to tell you that there's not a complaint that comes to our principal's offices at our schools that we don't dig into 100%. And we dig it into as much as we can, and I know they do that here. And so it's important. What I want you to know is this is hard stuff. You know, navigating parenting is tough stuff. And so when I asked you to raise your hand, you did it. When I said take it a little higher, you took it a little higher. And then when I asked you to take it a little higher, every single person took it a little higher. What I want you to know is when the going gets a little tough, when you think you're as far as you can go a little further. And when you're there, you can go a little further. And what I want you to do is make sure you do that with your kids because they're so important, and there's no thing that's more important than that. They need you to help them, help guide them, and move in the right direction. On behalf of Joni, myself, Jade, Camille, and our beautiful son Reed, it's been our pleasure to be here. Thank you guys so much.